when we think about the kinds of work we want to do, we often fall into the nonprofit sector because in the way it's legally developed, it feels like it's the only place where we can do good with our
Yeah.
wisdom and our knowledge, when really that is not true. And we have to flip the script.
If you've ever undersold your expertise, defaulted to a nonprofit structure because it felt like the only legitimate place to do good work, or quietly wondered whether what you know is actually worth building is a business, I want you to stay right here. Welcome back to the Well Woman Show, where we support you to lead with ease, live with joy, and create meaningful impact on your own terms. I'm your host, Giovanna Rossi. My guest today is Vanessa Roanhorse, the CEO of Roanhorse Consulting and Return on Indigenous Studios, an Indigenous-led social enterprise dedicated to shifting power dynamics in health and economic systems. She has led investment frameworks that center on Indigenous knowledge, including relationship-based lending models and capital strategies that decolonize traditional risk assessment methods. A citizen of Navajo Nation, she started in 2016 trying to close her own wealth gap and spent the next decade doing something most of us are still figuring out: building entirely new systems instead of just working harder inside broken ones. And this is near and dear to my heart because I've been working on systems change in my consulting business. And so we had a lot to talk about. It was a really great conversation. In the interview, we talk about why choosing a for-profit structure was an act of self-determination, not a compromise, how to stay grounded and purposeful when the political ground keeps shifting, why relationships, not strategies, not platforms, not scale, are the most durable thing any of us will ever build, what the messy, therapist-filled, grief-laced reality of 10 years in business actually looked like behind the scenes, and the question I don't hear women leaders ask nearly enough: what does life look like on the other side of building mode? And are we actually working toward it? This is one of those conversations I know you'll come back to listen to. Let's get into it. I'm speaking with Vanessa Roanhorse. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Giovanna. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited to get you here. I say get you here because it's taken a while, and I just think timing is everything. And we are, you know, women with like multiple roles, juggling all the things, and so it's just really, really great to have you on the show, Vanessa. And so I want to start by having you share with listeners, who are you in the world today?
Sure thing. I just want to say it took us both having 10-year anniversaries of our bodies of work to bring us together. So, in all due time.
That's
Um,
right.
my name's Vanessa. I am Navajo. I grew up on the Navajo Nation, where most of my family still resides, and I live here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But really, I think probably one of the bigger things in my life is that I'm a mother of a now 12-year-old and been in partnership with my person for nearly 20 years, which is wild how quickly time has come. And as of this year, have been a business owner of a for-profit social enterprise called Roanhorse Consulting, which I started in 2016 as a way to figure out how to close my personal individual wealth gap. Um, and the consulting firm really kind of came from relationships. I was looking for work. I was struggling to find work in New Mexico. I had been living in Chicago for 15 years prior, doing a variety of things, and work didn't come easy. And so through networks and partnerships, I was able to land a contract with the city of Albuquerque, which led me to wonder and question how capital moved, how people with great ideas are missed, and then also how these systems of economics and money, coming from an Indigenous worldview, what I was really interested in is like, how are we centering our whole relationship to the world around us, and how is money as a tool supposed to facilitate that, not be the primary driver. And I
Mm.
think that really has been sort of the questions I've grappled with for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, that is your body of work, right? So congratulations, first of all,
Thank you.
on on that 10-year anniversary. I know it's a big deal. It's a big deal because you've sustained not only yourself and your family, but your whole team. You have like quite a large team working on all of these projects with you. And so I just want to back up and kind of dig into a few things that you said, because we do have a lot of listeners who may be wondering, like, well, maybe I should start a for-profit social enterprise. And I also want to just reflect and put in context that a lot of times when we are working on quote unquote social justice issues or issues that may usually be in the nonprofit space in this mainstream society, we often undersell ourselves as experts and professionals. And so to see you take your work into a for-profit social enterprise space is just really inspiring. And so I just want to hear a little bit about how you made that decision and like what advice you would give others.
Um, I mean, truthfully, I think so much of it in the beginning really was just needing some kind of legal container that could allow me to pay my bills and do the things I knew how to do. But really, that was only the first couple of years. It was probably at a point where when I started to really think about the purpose of these legal structures, the purpose of these legal entities, I started to actually understand that right now, the kinds of businesses that we are asked to build are primarily rested in these two ideas that we get to make as much money as we want and do good and do whatever the work is, or we have to structure it in a nonprofit, which supposed to have community governance, like that's why you do it. It's supposed to return back to community, but long term, on both sides, it felt like we weren't asking ourselves better questions around how we should be structuring businesses to be financially sustainable. And to be financially sustainable means that you are not reliant on one type of funding, that you should have a diverse portfolio, because diversity in any ecosystem is a healthy ecosystem. But for some reason, we have bifurcated this idea that businesses that have social good, businesses that are looking at social justice, businesses that are looking at environmental justice, human rights, that these are things that we fundamentally should not be able to have financial sustainability. When really, if we're actually thinking about what it is we need to be doing, what we should be doing is touching every part of the ecosystem with these concepts, with these framings. And for me, Roanhorse Consulting and centering our Indigenous worldviews, not only just our view, but our methodologies and practices, that is worth something. And it is not just worth it because of the deep knowledge we bring, but these are people's entire lived experiences. These are like some of these are ancestral learnings, thousands of years. Um, for us not to acknowledge the value of these things that we do, it feels like it de-emphasizes the power of our knowledge and our wisdom, but also that we're only allowed to commodify it through um, through philanthropy, and only if we say that it is only valuable if we are addressing a vulnerability. It's really an asset framing from my point of view. And I know that's a lot of information, but I think when we think about the kinds of work we want to do, we often fall into the nonprofit sector because in the way it's legally developed, it feels like it's the only place where we can do good with our
Yeah.
wisdom and our knowledge, when really that is not true. And we have to flip the script, because the last thing I'll say is like, it is women from every community that is starting businesses faster, that is running organizations that are creating more psychological safety, that is ensuring we're investing in women, children, and their caretakers and their families. And we're the ones running the majority of the nonprofits in the United States. So
Yeah.
we're not creating true financial safety, sustainability, or self determination in this.
Yeah. My gosh, there's so much there. And so, Vanessa, when you talk about building new systems, right? Not just participating in old systems. Are you scaling this so that you can teach other people these new systems or like how are you viewing the intersection or the integration of the old or like dominant culture systems with the newer systems which aren't really new because they come from a long history of like your history and culture and years of wisdom, right? So how do you see that? Those things.
It's been a journey to figure out what it was we've been doing. I'm not gonna lie, like I don't think we started as a consulting firm, pretty basic, A plus B equals C. Um, but what I found was that work, we were asking questions and approaching the work so differently than a lot of folks. And as an Indigenous woman who does not come from a financial background, um, I had a lot of learning. I had a huge learning curve to understand what it looked like. And so in some ways, like the first 5 years was just me learning and reaching out to people and learning with them and learning from them. But also looking around and being like, this isn't working. Why isn't this working? And in that process of the first 5 years, just learning, that's when I think I shifted from just being a consulting advisory firm to realizing that what we were doing with partners was asking them, these are our clients, what is it you're trying to do? And everyone would be like, it's a strategic plan, it's a theory of change. I'm trying to create a program that does X plus, that serves community members in this part of the country. But when you really sat down with them, you were like, but why? That piece of what we started asking changed the way we worked. And
Mm,
I don't think we've been a traditional consulting firm, most of the 10 years we've been here. But I can say we are the kind of organization who wants to work with you to figure out not just your why, but who is this for? And if we're doing this for other people, how do we know? And so that to me has been the fundamental shift for us in terms of what we do and why in our tenure we have incubated new businesses, new concepts and ideas, and we've rolled them out into the ecosystem because part of what we saw is it's really hard to test new ideas and build new things when you have you're within an institution, you're within an existing organizational infrastructure, or it doesn't fit in your traditional business model. And so through learning, co-building, testing, failing, trying again, we have found that like where our our ability to teach and open the sector to more people, more ideas has been to just constantly be out there asking the questions and inviting people in. And we have done that in so many different capacities from creating new capital mechanisms that use relationship based underwriting and criteria to
mm,
supporting larger institutions, credit unions, and CDFIs to push against their boundaries of risk and underwriting to developing evaluation frameworks that support community health first. And these are all parts of the system. And in 2024, we launched our studio, Return on Indigenous, because at this point, we have enough information across our ecosystem to understand what we believe we can do the most, which is identify strong business concepts that don't exist to serve Indigenous people and all people, but using Indigenous knowledge to essentially get them from idea to launch to fully capitalization so that they can build their solution for the next generation. And so that's why I say we're moving from consulting advisory to more of an indigenous ecosystem architecture firm. And that's really our sweet spot.
Wow, that's so amazing. I'm like, whoa. Uh, that's just really amazing. And thank you for giving the specific examples of like the relationship based financial loans. I think you said you're but the relationship based part of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so how do you think, Vanessa, that you can embed these things so deep that they're not going that they can't just be, "Oh, when this program's over, it's gone," kind of thing, like, especially in the current political climate, and I know you and I have talked about this and sort of like
Yeah.
how do you, gather the wisdom and the knowledge and the learnings so that it becomes the central way the way of doing things?
Yeah. Um, so I think that uh it's a mind shift change. You know what I mean? Like I think as indigenous people in the United States, I don't think we have ever fundamentally bought into the American dream to begin with. And so our version of the worst possible thing that could happen has happened. And we've spent the last hundreds of years trying to refine our way, rebuild our knowledge systems, our wisdom systems, our cultural practices, our language, just trying to find new ways to connect to it all. But in that process of the worst thing that could ever have happened has already happened to you, we also remember the times when we had to hold our knowledge and our wisdom and store it away for a time when we could be loud and sharing it again and replanting these ideas and ensuring these roots are so deep. And sometimes it's caretaking the space and the lens that you're in. Sometimes it's hiding the wisdoms and knowledge where they need to go. But I can say that, like, from my perspective, we are in such a great time of shift, and nobody wants to see people get hurt. Nobody wants to see how things are shaking out. But I do think this work and these conversations, it's so important that we look at the things we've created and those things that have roots and those things that need to be protected, concepts, um, you know, the way we have come back around to be like, uh, love is love, right? Like these concepts, these like important mind shifts, these are the things we have to protect, and these are the things we have to hold on to. This idea of rematriation, which is really rebuilding your relationship with the earth around you, is one definition. For us, it's about doubling down on these concepts and looking at our networks, our partners, and our community members, and and trying to figure out how do we continue to underwrite and support them. And for those wisdoms and knowledges that can't stay where they are for different reasons, where do they need to go?
Mm,
I would never assume what we have made here won't change because things have to change. What I can say, though, is that we are articulating a concept around risk, this idea around how do we define capital? It's not doesn't just have to be money, but also that the nature of capitalism itself is isn't hasn't just like not worked, it's failing us so bad drastically. And I don't think most people deny that anymore, at least in the US. Um, but that like what we're offering, that's like the small boat on a tributary that's not going where the rest of this river is rushing towards. And we're not alone. I think when you ask about how do we get through these times, how do you know this work will continue and not just get subsumed by the socio-political nightmare and echo chamber and the loudness of it all? It's because the more people I see returning to community, returning to acknowledging that like people matter, relationships matter, um, that like that's really where the long-term strategy lives. And the things we're offering today are the mini solutions to the bigger
mm,
realities. And we're not alone, it's a movement. There's tons of organizations and people and leaders and communities that have been actively doing this. And it's not like we have to create anything new. It's here. Um, I think the difference is we have to do some conceding, which is I may not get everything I want, but I'll get everything I need. And that's a
Mm.
very different mind shift change for this country.
Yeah, and so are you focused on other people also being able to say that? Because I'm just gonna say, like, it's great that we can get to the place where we could say that. Like, I may not get everything I want, but I have what I need. But meanwhile, the dominant culture, people running a lot of the big systems, are they saying that? And like, what is, at some point our role is not to try to fix them, right? We're building new systems that they can either come along or not. And so do you what do you say about that?
You know, I feel like it's not my job to change those people's minds. And I only say that because I am not convinced that folks doing the things that they're doing don't know they're doing it and aren't doing it with all the wisdom and knowledge in front of them. They have made choices. And truthfully, they continue to make those same choices. So it's not about changing their mind or revealing to them some secret thing to humanity. It's that we are all human beings and they've decided these things are most important to them and they don't care. Um, I think the real change and the real voices obviously are young people,
Mm.
is sitting and talking and spending time with our young people. It's us acknowledging we have a toxic relationship with social media and buying things and purchasing things, and that we individually have to be making those individual choices to change how we spend our days. And I'm included in that. And when I think about where my voice can matter the most, it's not on TV, it's not in these big public spaces. My work matters when I can sit in a room with investors, philanthropic partners, and folks who are developing and drafting policies that are going to impact the way people get capital, money to do the things they want to do. I feel like that's where my greatest opportunity is to provide examples, um, show them that this isn't just possible, but we're doing it, but it's also to remind folks who have such power that like we are in this together. So I think that's where I try to spend most of my time. And then with my son and with his friends when they stop calling me Unc. Um, I don't know. I think everyone has a place. Like you have this beautiful podcast and you've been storytelling and telling things that people haven't heard. And to me, that's just as important. It's so important that we can go to places and hear folks who normally wouldn't have a platform. That's like long standing to me, is these stories are going to live a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's all dependent upon relationships, which is what you already mentioned, right? Like we have to stay in relationship in order to tell somebody the story, right? In order to have somebody to tell. And and also I just want to say um what helps me right now in this kind of chaos that we're in is to like really double down on relationships, on grounding myself in the good work that I know and looking for what's mine to do and what's mine to contribute. And that might not be what yours is to contribute. Obviously, it's different. And when I do that, it feels a little less crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so does that resonate with you?
I mean, it does because, like, I think I think the times we're living in are maddening, but they're like orchestrated, manufactured maddening because of the way the world is around us and for how long capitalism told us that this is a solo journey. It's a winner takes all journey. It is a scale to infinite size with no consequence belief. It's just all that stuff, right? This is the value. So to me, I think what you're naming is we have to remind ourselves that this is everything functions because of relationships. I don't care what people say about AI. You know, we actually have to have relationships with one another to be able to actually take care and do the things we want to do. But also relationships allow us to dream and problem solve and um, work through loneliness and sadness. Like these are all how kinship and relationship circles work. Because at the end of the day, like I think we have more shared values as human beings than we don't. Um, and so I spend a lot of time thinking about the value systems that we're all holding, and I do think we have a lot more in common. And I just find that you can't talk about value systems and shared value, which means shared outcomes, which means shared versions of a future that looks the way we want it to look if you don't have relationships, And this is like ancient stuff. Like, the other day my team and I were talking about how shame had a place in community.
Mm.
Shame was one of those things that kept people from acting out. There's nothing wrong. It's about what you do, just like conflict. There's nothing wrong with conflict. It's about what you do with conflict.
Yeah.
It's like what you do. Why does shame exist? What is the purpose of it? And I think we've just forgotten that because we've gotten to this whole fake modesty, fake like neighborliness. But behind the scenes, it's like we're not doing any of that stuff. I would rather have someone tell me in a if there was a conflict, I have a problem with you. I think you're X, Y, and Z, because you know what? At least I understand where they're coming from, and it's either something I want to work and resolve, or it's something where I'm like, okay, fine. I don't want this relationship.
Right.
Um. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah. That's it for our show today. Remember, if you need support to live your Well Woman life, follow us on Instagram at Well Woman Life. And don't forget, you can catch the show on NPR anytime. Just head to npr.org/podcasts and search for The Well Woman Show. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts and leave us a quick review. It really helps others find the show. I always love hearing from you, so drop a comment or message me on socials at Well Woman Life. I'm Giovanna Rossi for The Well Woman Show. Until next time, have a super powerful week.